All right. Well, we might get underway. I can see there's quite a list of people that have joined us today for this Many Faces of Landcare get together. So thank you very much to all of the MPs that are joining us as part of our New South Wales Parliamentary Friends of Landcare. We've got people from right around the state of New South Wales, which is fantastic. So thank you once again for all of your support. I think all of us recognise the important role that Landcare plays in our local communities, and being able to at least have a get together today, albeit not face to face, is a really nice thing. And of course, this week is Landcare Week, where we acknowledge the thousands, literally, of people and groups across New South Wales and Australia that take part in Landcare activities. So today is a bit of a chance to hear about what some of those groups are actually doing. And we're being joined today by a group of Landcarers, and to lead us through a bit of a discussion today, we've got Marg Applebee, who's going to help lead things. And Marg sits on the Landcare New South Wales Executive Committee, represents the Central West Natural Resource Management Working Group, and he's also the local Landcare coordinator for Central West Lachlan Landcare. So Marg will be running us through what the format is today, the themes. There'll be some question time as well, and a bit of a panel discussion that she'll be helping coordinate. So we look forward to hearing from a range of different Landcarers and what they're doing in different parts of the state. Thanks once again to everyone for joining in, and Marg, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dougal. It's such a pleasure to be with you this morning. I must put in a little apology for Adrian Zammit, our CEO, who has just had his second Pfizer shot and has not dealt with that so well today. So our thoughts go out to Adrian. Any of you that have had either or both of your shots could probably commiserate a little bit with him. So just apologies from Adrian. We also do have an apology from our chairperson, Steph Cameron, as well. So I would like to kick off by just acknowledging that I am on Wiradjuri country, and perhaps it might be also an opportunity for all of you to acknowledge what country you are coming to us from today as well. In the chat box, it'd be lovely to hear from you. I'd just like to acknowledge our elders past, present and emerging as well. So to kick off things today, yes, obviously need to acknowledge that it is Landcare Week, and there's certainly, given that we've even in COVID conditions, there are still a lot of Landcare activities going on during the week, including the National Landcare Conference, which is being held virtually over the next few days. We were fortunate to be able to host National Tree Day events in Forbes and Parks over the weekend as well, and I do believe that there are many regional centres that will be also holding those types of events. So still fortunate that for some of us we can still keep kicking in the background, kicking Landcare goals. So thanks so much for being with us. Now, a quick overview of Landcare New South Wales. So basically we are the peak representative body for the community Landcare movement in New South Wales. The fact that we are grassroots and we do consult with our members is extremely important to us. And I guess that way we can acknowledge that we do represent Landcarers on the ground. So the Landcare movement is a community-based approach to managing and protecting our natural resources, creating more productive and sustainable farms, conserving our environment and building more cohesive and resilient communities. With over 60,000 active Landcarers in New South Wales, including myself and many people on this call, Landcare New South Wales acts as the conduit between local Landcare communities and key decision makers, working to ensure that our Landcarers are supported at every level by providing leadership, skills, resources and representation. So if you would like more information, I'm sure that our support team will be forwarding through information at the end of this session, but you can go onto the Landcare New South Wales website And I just want to acknowledge our vision and mission before we proceed. So our vision is Landcare in New South Wales is recognised by governments, corporates, philanthropists and general community as the most effective, impactful and influential go-to vehicle for the management of our land, environment and communities in rural and urban areas. And our mission, we will provide leadership skills and resources to empower Landcarers in New South Wales to have all that they need to care for our land, environment and communities. So I do believe that we are fortunate to have a fantastic video from Upper Mokai Rehydration Project that we would love to share with you before we move on to our panel discussion.
I was riding here one day and I had a sense of this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm currently the chair of Upper Mokai Landcare group. We were going into and through a really significant drought when we really got our heads together about how can we work on a catchment-wide basis to rehydrate and drought-proof 13 farms scattered across this catchment of the Upper Mokai. I think Australia now, with climate change, we have to be in drought preparation all the time. And I do think Landcare's got a really important role. I just think community is so important. It's one of the basic tenets of Landcare. It is about rehydration and regenerative farming, but it is all about community health.
The Upper Mokai Rehydration Project is one of the largest rehabilitation projects that LLS has undertaken in this region. This project is primarily funded through Catchment Action New South Wales. It's great to see so many different landholders get involved with a project like this.
I manage Windy Station. It's about 21,500 hectares on the top end of the Liverpool Plains. We run a beef cattle enterprise and a dryland cropping enterprise. We've got an area of the Yarramumba Creek which is on the lower end of the catchment. The project for us is about excluding livestock from there, which is fencing. Then we've got some remedial earthworks that we'll undertake there, and then also trying to get some native veg back in there, so in the form of trees and other things that will stabilise and help maintain that waterway. We want to be a sustainable business, and to do that we need to be financially sustainable but also environmentally sustainable.
On the edge of the Liverpool Plains at Blackville, New South Wales. We have 4,000 acres here. We've got quite a few projects happening. A large portion of that is to fence out the creeks, basically to control the stock, encourage as much growth as we possibly can in the creeks. And the aim of that is to slow down the water and to basically keep as much sediment as we possibly can on our farm. One of the other elements of our work is earthworks. In a large portion of our contours, we're creating level sill spills. So we're basically creating spillways. They're on a ridge and the water will then run down the contour and it will then spill out in a fan-like direction. It will then have the ability to then soak up in our property again rather than continuing to run down into a gully and create erosion. Having local land services help fund part of this project has enabled for these works to happen quicker than what we would have been able to do by ourselves.
This project has enabled a much broader scale adoption of those practices, and we can start to see change on a bigger scale. This whole concept now of looking at a catchment like this and thinking of a sponge and trying to get that sponge working properly, so when we do get the 50 millimotors that we're getting tomorrow, it doesn't just come in and out of the system, it's actually getting into the ground and it's residual flow that's coming out.
We're at Big Jacks Creek, which is in the foothills of Liverpool Ranges. I think some of our practices have really led to drying the property. So on the Oaks, we've got 3 pieces of work. We're doing fencing on Oaky Creek. We're doing some work converting grade contours to swale banks. And the third thing is we're converting some long-term oats fodder cropping paddocks into permanent pasture paddocks. I really like the opportunity to look after sort of 3 kilometres of pretty pristine waterways, and it's great to go down and see a proliferation of birds and wildlife in those creeks. It's a vastly improved environment.
Projects such as the Upper Mookai Landcare Rehydration Project build resilience against climatic variations and fluctuations. They also mitigate the rate of land degradation. I love seeing landholders achieve things on the ground and being really pleased with the results. And we can see the landscape changing and having benefits. That's what inspires me.
This rehydration will store more carbon in the soil. And so that is one of the most important things because it's the basis of life. When we all come together, we've all got this common aim of thinking, okay, so let's do the best thing for our landscape. Let's heal it and let's protect it for the future.
Thanks for that fantastic clip. Look, I think that a perfect example of partnerships, which is what Landcare are known for, working hard on their partnerships, working with others to achieve fantastic outcomes. And that happens, I guess, on that landscape level and also on a community level as well. Obviously, many of our Landcarers on the ground are working within their community, so a wonderful central point to enable on-ground works. So we move on to our panel discussion, and if I could ask people to if you've got any upcoming questions around any of these topics, then please feel free to pop them into the chat bar. We will have a time for open questions at the end. I would basically, like to introduce Jessie Leck, Richie Benson, Jim Kinkead, and Louise Turner. And you can see a little bit of detail about each of these fabulous contributors to Landcare. Now, you will notice that they are all contributing on many different levels. Some are engaged as employees, and we have also Jim is the chair as well. So quite often, many of our people who are also employees are volunteering as well. And it's great to have you all joining us. Thank you very much for being part of our panel discussion. And here we go. So basically our questions are based around three topics. Firstly, highlights, secondly, challenges, and thirdly, opportunities. So that's quite often the way that we approach things. We find that very effectively because obviously we want to inspire with highlights. We want to find out about challenges so that potentially we others don't make the same mistakes or be faced with the same challenges in moving ahead with our projects. And then, of course, we always want to find out about new opportunities. So that's opportunities for partnership, opportunities for works on the ground. So in terms of highlights, showcasing Landcare's diverse activities across the state and highlighting examples of exciting projects that you've been involved with. You have been involved with Landcare in your region for a long time. I think 3 of you, and perhaps Richie lesser, a newbie. What sort of Landcare projects are you and your Landcare groups engaged in? Maybe throw to you, Louise.
Oh, thanks, Marg. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. It's great to see so many faces. I was really interested in that video just before. One of the really big, there's 2 highlights for us in Western region, which is the largest geographical region. The first one is that, you know, when the Landcare funding started coming through in 2015, we only had 8 Landcare member groups in our region. and now we actually have 32. So the uptake of Landcare membership and Landcare projects is pretty amazing over the last 5 and 6 years. The biggest project highlight for us would be something very similar to what they're doing in the Upper Mukai. We have formed an alliance called the Far West Rangelands Rehydration Alliance. So that alliance was formed from a group of like-minded landholders that wanted to look at keeping water in our landscape. So, you know, helping to stop these massive dust storms, erosion problems. So we're looking at it on a much bigger scale. We have 1 million hectares of land at the moment in the Western region that is being ripped, ponded, banked. We've just received, we've got a $200,000 through 2 projects from the Environmental Trust. One is for seed nurseries. So we've set up 20 seed nurseries in our region, and that will be to help disperse seed and to propagate other sites that we're working on. We've just received $100,000 for landscape filters. So we're actually building filters in our landscape to help with erosion issues on a much larger scale. And we've just received $200,000 from the new drought fund, the federal drought fund, to look at benchmarking. So we're basically looking at whether the increase in vegetation is working in regards to the increase in soil moisture and the increase in carbon sequestration as well. So we're working with DPI and local land services on these projects, which is pretty good, I reckon.
Yeah, fantastic. And Jess, I'd love to hear from you the type of projects that you and your Landcare group are engaged in.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for being here today and having me speak. So the Mid-Coast is really interesting in terms of Landcare because we incorporate all the different facets of Landcare. So anyone who has been around Landcare knows that it's really difficult to put a single explanation and description on what it is that we do. And we encompass all of it and all the diversity. So I think it's a really interesting place to act in the space. So we have everything from our diligent, dedicated coast care groups who are out there every Tuesday morning, rain, hail or shine, taking care of the Biddo bush in those dunes. And then we extend all the way into inland to the Barrington Tops and the Elands escarpment area, which is a lot more rurally dominated. So, and with a lot more productivity projects happening. And out there, it looks a lot more like individual landholders coming together to share resources and ideas rather than community days. So a really fantastic project that just wrapped up, and I think they've just finished works now, is down in the branch in the lower area of our region, where it was similar to that project, but they were working more on a wetland scale, and they had 8 landholders who got together across the subcatchment and have worked on stock exclusion and revegetation and have restored water quality in what was previously one of the lowest rated water bodies in this area of New South Wales. So just by getting neighbours together and sharing resources, one of the most important things in our area is people want to do better. They just, you know, don't know what they're doing wrong. So that's a priority for Landcare here, is just about getting neighbours together with faces they can trust and community transition of knowledge, so that we can really make sure that everyone is doing what they want to do, which is just managing this land the best they possibly can for the next generation.
And have you seen, Jess, many changes in the nature of these projects over time?
Yes, so I mean, they're definitely growing in scale. The scale and ambition of the projects that people are taking on is just amazing to me, especially when we look at the fact that they're being run by what can be quite small groups, run by, you know, 8 to 10 volunteers, and the scale and the bravery and the projects that they're taking on never cease to astound me. And there's also now been a lot more of a transition towards, I mean, everyone knows that hot buzzword, regenerative farming, that's been coming more and more out in the last 10 years. And that's really gaining traction along with landscape rehydration to be the real priorities coming out of the drought.
Beautiful. What about you, Richie? What sort of Landcare projects are you and your Landcare groups engaged in?
Unmute. Look, I'm sorry, I will just say before I continue talking, I've got roadworks up the hill and so there's a fair bit of noise, so sorry about that. So I'm involved in two groups. So I'm the founder of the Cumberland Reach Landcare group. So it's Cumberland Reach is a small community on the Hawkesbury River, halfway between Windsor and Wiseman's Ferry. We're a community of about 200 people, and we've got the river on one of our boundaries. So the restoration of, revegetating river flat forest, which is a threatened ecological community. That's a big part of that group. We've got a few sites about bringing landholders together, which wouldn't usually be involved in Landcare, because showing them the way, showing them how it works. And we had community events around that, where local land services and our Hawkesbury Landcare network coordinator came down, and really made it a community event. And of course, planting's really fun, so it's a really great way to get the kids involved and get people to see, another aspect of their community and the river. So, and the other thing is the Koala Fest Hawkesbury event. So we ran that over 2 years, up in Kurrajong, and then in Windsor, second year. And that's all about raising awareness of koalas in the Hawkesbury, and that we do need to, preserve and protect them best we can. So we invited government agencies and councils and community organisations to come together, hold a stall on the day and talk about the sort of conservation work they're doing and how community can get involved. So that could be people, volunteering directly on the ground or even working on their own land and receiving funds to better protect koalas. And that was, we started Koala Fest just before the 1925 season. So I think we've really had, in some ways, we're kind of a step ahead. The fires had come through pretty crazy, which wasn't real good, but it was good to see that the community was already thinking about koalas and the threat that they were seeing before those fires came. So, and now we're continuing to see koala conservation and Landcare groups grow around that, those sorts of events and stuff that we're in.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Richie. Jim, lucky last. I will get to you, Jim. Jim, can I ask you, what are the benefits that have you and farmers or landholders seen from Landcare in your region?
Yeah, look, thanks, Marg. North Coast is quite a diverse and complex region with 11 networks from Tweed down to the Hastings. Projects vary quite a lot, from koala habitat restoration, riparian restoration, wild dogs, rabbits, education days, mentoring junior Landcare groups, local creep projects, environmental projects on Crown lands, to the regional based programs that are catchment based and look at property planning that's building on existing work that's already done in the community. And what we're finding is our projects are reactive and adaptive to government priorities and also to the passion and interests of the local community. So it's always a bit of a moving target depending on what's happening in our climate. The benefits we see is that we're starting to see a change in farm practices and seeing the benefits of how commercial and environment can work together better. Regionally, we're supporting the connection between government, environmental organisations and the local community. We think that's a really good benefit. And the collaborations to improve farm practices, I think is a really fantastic thing, the opportunities that are there. In the sense, I went to a field day last week. It was organised by a local Landcare group and the local government. It was on a cattle property that bordered a major water supply for the Lismore community. It was a collaboration of local government, the local county council, the local meatworks, the local food cooperative, Ozfish, and the focus was on cows and fish. And it was about improved farm-based stock watering practices. So that's a great example of the collaboration that can come out of just a simple program that we have with government through the local Landcare coordinator program. Those connections are made.
So I think from all of your points, pretty much, you know, I guess two words are flagged for me: partnership and collaboration, and that's what and adaptability is another one, Jim. I think we have to become adaptable to funding, which sometimes also means that you know, we can work in something else that we might not have originally thought about, but work it back into some of our priority areas as well. And it does give us the opportunity to collaborate and perhaps look at things differently as well. So can I continue on with you, Jim? In terms of challenges, what are the main challenges that Landcare faces in your region?
Yeah, look, there's quite a few challenges. Look, and probably just to keep it short, look, attracting volunteer management committee members is a real big challenge. And we need to be able to demonstrate the benefits to Landcare by encouraging the volunteers to step up from the level of local Landcare group. We need to be able to resource organisational and corporate requirements. That's always challenging. Providing support to our local groups and the wider farmers and community through sustainable tenure for local coordinators is going to be a challenge, and support for committees, how we do that in the future, is always going to be a challenge, especially with volunteer committees. Regionally, engaging more with the Aboriginal community, is a challenge for us, and we're starting to break through with that. We've just recently, as a region, got a $260,000 Aboriginal engagement program fund to employ an Aboriginal engagement officer. This afternoon, after this meeting, I'm going to an Aboriginal field day where rangers are going to demonstrate what they're doing on their property and potentially do a cultural burn. And the other challenge is supporting the health and wellbeing of our volunteers and staff, which is becoming a big, especially in this COVID world.
Yeah, for sure. Louise, I imagine that you would have a totally different set of, well, perhaps one totally different set of challenges and others that are quite similar to Jim's as well.
Yeah, we do. The health and welfare of our staff and volunteers is really, really important. I guess, you know, one of the really big challenges that we face, the staffing levels in comparison to our geographical expanse, I suppose, and it's all about coordinator and volunteer fatigue. So even though we have the largest region in the state, we actually have the smallest population. You know, and sometimes we could travel 8 or 9 hours just to go to a meeting that might be 1 or 2 hours long. So I don't necessarily think that's sort of reflected really well in the funding that we do get. However, saying that, we are exceedingly adaptable, and you know, I guess one of the other challenges is trying to teach anyone that comes into Landcare that they need to think outside the square. And you know, we're doing. I think we're doing it fairly well. We do get a lot of what I say new recruits into Landcare here, so people that it might be their first Landcare gig, for instance. So you know, sometimes the cost of you know the relocation and living out in these parts of the world is quite high for them as well, because their families might not be here. So we try and nurture that, and we have a very, very flexible sort of, you know, working framework as well. But yeah, you know, during COVID especially, I think it was, yeah, it got really quite difficult, but because we are so flexible and, you know, we just said, you know, have to put family first. The environment's important, but everyone's health and well-being is actually more important. So very much in line with what Jim's been saying in that sense.
Fantastic. Thanks, Louise. What about you, Jess? What are the main challenges that Landcare faces in your region?
Yeah, so like you were saying, some issues are the same everywhere, and that's just volunteer fatigue, and recruitment is a constant struggle for us. And I think that is a large part of the volunteer fatigue is the level of expectation put on our executive and management committee volunteer members. It's it's huge, and I'm constantly admiring the effort and the contributions that our volunteer members give, especially in those executive positions. But as my colleagues have said, it's an issue statewide. Another really big issue for us, and our area was heavily impacted by the bushfires. Up to about 66% of our area was burnt.
Wow.
In regions. So one issue that's really been highlighted since that, and in that sort of big rollout that we've experienced, which admittedly has been wonderful, of funding since then, is the lack of proper, like the lack of efficiency and effective management of that funding, and the current structure that it's rolled out in is really difficult as practitioners and as informed landholders on the ground. The constraints of that funding doesn't fit what we know to be best practice. So it doesn't end up being effective use of what is very generous amounts of money, because the short turnaround of the current way which biodiversity funding is managed in the state means that you don't get the lifetime to the project that you actually need in order to perform best practice. And it results in, not the most efficient use of what is really, really scarce and valuable funding.
Sure. And I think that probably a lot of us face that with different funding. It's just that specific fire relief funding, I suppose, is just covers such a massive area. So yeah, that's really good to know. Thanks, Jess. And Richie, in terms of challenges for you guys in your area, what would you flag as your biggest challenges? Very briefly.
I think for the Hawkesbury area in general, I mean, even in the PN, into Penrith, we just had the flood back in March, and we had another flood last February. So there was huge damage to the banks. We lost acres and acres of land, and it's almost like a bushfire sometimes. Some areas get hit quite hard with the flood, and other areas like nothing ever happened. And it's had huge impacts. Caravan parks have been impacted, lots of caravan parks on the river. So it's just trying to get those caravan parks involved in Landcare and help protect their land and protect their business. Other challenges we have, of course, is bushfires. The 1925 season, the fires come through the Wallamine Blue Mountains National Park, and of course impacted on the Hawkesbury. So definitely those issues there, and needing to support our property owners and our land carers, that are being directly impacted from those fires, in terms of resilience and that sort of thing. I think the volunteers are a big problem. Like, a lot of the Hawkesbury is a peri-urban area. Everyone's busy managing their own land, their own weeds, all the impacts that come from living in Sydney with high nutrient runoff and all that sort of thing. So it can be quite difficult for volunteers because everyone's so busy, and I need to work on my land. I don't have any time to work on anyone else's, and that's what a lot of the Hawkesbury is about helping other people on each other's land. But I think we're slowly getting better with that. I think especially after the issues that we've had in terms of natural disaster, there's more people coming out to help and see where they can get involved.
Yeah.
But of course, we do have heaps of potential here in the Hawkesbury, and our local Landcare coordinator, she's only 3 days a week, and we wish we could have her on 5 days a week. Work is there.
I think that seems to be widely felt across the state, Richie, that people value their coordinators so much, and that they're that go-to person on the ground, and they spread very thinly. So, but are very rewarded in terms of job satisfaction and in terms of connection with the community. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So look, let's move on to opportunities, the bit that I am the most excited about. So having all of you from such a diverse area, we would have some wonderful opportunities ahead. And even though COVID has certainly dampened things over the past 12, 18 months. You know, I think that we've been pretty fortunate, certainly in regional areas, that a lot of our Landcare works can continue in that space. So yeah, obviously challenges with our city cousins as well, but certainly we've been quite fortunate to be able to continue with a lot of our projects, and a lot of that just purely that community engagement. So in terms of opportunities, change is happening quickly all around us and in relation to agriculture and NRM. This change is principally driven by climate change, the C word, and loss of biodiversity. Given this, do you see significant opportunities for Landcare in your region? And if so, what are they? Could I start with you, Jim? I caught you, sorry.
Sorry, look, thank you. Yeah, look, opportunities, there's always opportunities. But I just really want to say the investment that the New South Wales government has shown by providing the New South Wales Landcare program that allows us to employ part-time coordinators has been fantastic. It allows growth, it allows us to create jobs, it allows us to create work in the local community, which helps the local economy. We can respond quite better to local community and farmers' environmental needs, spread the Landcare ethos, and build resilience to climate change. And if we had like a committed 5 to 10 year funding stream, that would be giving us the ability to have a more strategic planned approach to improve our partnerships and outcomes, improve efficiencies, and provide security and staff for volunteers. And it gives us the potential to develop partnerships and projects to improve best practice, property planning, carbon credits. We're starting to see the emerging carbon credit market, which we will be getting involved in improving our biodiversity, our soil and water quality. It's that support that we get from government is critical to having us evolve more into filling that gap between government and community for the environment.
Yep. Fantastic, would agree wholeheartedly. What about you, Louise? What are some of your fabulous opportunities out there in Western?
Oh, fabulous opportunities. The sky is the limit for us, Marg, in Western. You know us, we just hit a challenge head on. I just want to reiterate what Jim has said about the program funding. Like it's been a massive opportunity just for the region. So traditionally, Landcarers in the Western region have been small groups of landholders that are, sort of working with government, doing different things. We now have big opportunities for urban Landcare projects. So Broken Hill Landcare is now a big urban group. They have over 300 members within the city boundary, and they're looking at some amazing projects and just working with local council and other partners, sort of electricity companies, mining companies, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to expand that. We're setting up a local Landcare group in Burke, and that's actually now supported by local council, the Men's Shed, Ozfish. It's just about building those partnerships and opportunities. And without our Landcare coordinators, we just wouldn't be able to do that. And again, to reiterate what Jim has said, some agreement on longer term funding would really be able to see us achieve a lot more over time, because we know that that's guaranteed. In Western, we have 3 full-time coordinators, and we've managed to take on enough project work from outside sources that we actually have funded a part-time project officer as well. But the more staff we get, the more people want, and the more work we're actually getting. So we could easily employ another full-time project officer and another full-time coordinator. We've also partnered with the Biodiversity Conservation Trust, and we will be employing a part-time biodiversity extension officer in the region shortly as well. So we're sort of going ahead in leaps and bounds, but there still aren't enough hours in the week. The more we're doing, the more people see that Landcare are doing, the more that they actually want Landcare to do. And, you know, for us, we work so well with our local land services here in Western, and we help them to, you know, get their on-ground works managed and going, and, you know, working with groups of people instead of just single individuals. So it's a win-win situation. But we you know, we're very, very grateful for what we have, but we can always do lots more with more.
Yeah, and you raise a good point there too, Louise, certainly regarding, I guess, that value add side. You know, once you have that coordinator in place, then the funding then multiplies, because that coordinator can apply for funding for projects, and then quite often that then might fill out the rest of their job on a project, or it might be an opportunity for a Landcare group to engage someone else. So those employment benefits alone, let alone the on-ground benefits, are quite considerable beyond just the actual Landcare funding. So yeah, and quite often that's not recognised, and certainly, well, Landcare New South Wales did put together in partnership with Oregon a fantastic report that we might actually send out with the package after this as well to our MPs and representatives. Look, Jess, kind of rounding up a bit now in terms of opportunities. What do you see as opportunities in your area moving ahead?
Yeah, so I mean, if there was one silver lining that came out of the threefold disaster that we are hopefully coming out the tail end of, it's that climate change has been accepted in communities where it wasn't previously being discussed. And that acknowledgement and discussion even is really, really, it's leading to some fantastic ideas and some enthusiasm and ideas that we could really harness. We can really take that acceptance and the fact that it's not taboo in these pubs and these small corners of the community, and really allow us to present opportunities out of it. So we've got landholders in the area who are asking questions about carbon sequestration farming. We've got some out there thinkers in the area who are thinking about replanting for carbon, for climate security, and how we can go about changing our food growing networks locally to be safe going into a changing climate. And some really fantastic ideas that have come out of jumping. All the last 18 months have allowed us as a community to jump a hurdle that we may not have gotten by otherwise. So there's some really fantastic ideas out there. But echoing everything that was said by my co-panelists, the coordinators had full workloads before these ideas came along, and in order to really execute them properly, longer term, more hours, you know, all the same story that everyone's always going to say, that's how we execute these things. Yeah. That's how we can grow, because everyone was already had a full plate. In order to grow, we need to find ways to expand their capacity.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, Jess. And Richie, for you, what do you see as opportunities moving ahead now? You're just on mute.
Sorry, I keep on forgetting that. Look, as I said, we've had, you know, a couple of floods, and the impacts of that has been, you know, it's really devastated caravan parks, farmland, and that sort of thing. So I think a lot of living along the Hawkesbury and Pan is all about views and seeing the water and that sort of thing. And I think following the latest flood that we've had, people have seen the results of these, you know, planting projects along the river and that sort of thing. Okay, well, it does actually work. And we're seeing that more people are actually interested in getting more veg on their banks to get their cattle off it, and to do more replanting stuff on the banks, which is really good. So I think without that flood happening, people wouldn't have seen the real need for that. So I think, you know, in terms of being a carrier for resilience funds, you know, Landcare and the Hawkesbury and Pan could definitely step up to that, and it is step up a lot further with that greater support. So I think that's a big part of something we could do. And then, of course, it's a similar way in bushfires too, but definitely flood. You know, we've always got that risk, you know, with Warragam, the dam just upstream, spilling, and that could happen at any time. So there's definitely, you know, more property owners wanting to get involved in that and supporting us to support them.
Yeah, thanks, Richie. And it is quite often the way. I mean, that's human nature. It quite often takes a disaster, unfortunately, to bring change and bring action. And I guess if we can keep that momentum with that change and action as a result, and be adaptable, as Jim was referring to our adaptability earlier, then you know, that's at least engaging in positive change as a result. So so that's a wonderful positive. Thank you so much, my lovely panelists, for your contributions. I'm just going to put it out there now to our wider network that are on the Zoom, and we would love to hear some questions from you. If you've got any hot burning questions that you would like to send our way, we would love to hear from you, either through the chat panel or just the hands up. We'd love to hear from you. Come on, I've got to have someone who's the brave first person. I can see Mick Beach there. He's got a question. I can feel it coming.
Go on, Mick, do it.
Yeah, I will do. I will. Hey, look, I was really fascinated around the commentary around the Landcare coordinators and the fact that they do work for 3 days and not the full 5 days. It's an interesting thing for politicians. People say, give us more money, we can employ them full time. But can you just explain to me what the extra 2 days a week do to increase the capacity of the Landcare coordinators across the state? Like, just how important is that?
Maybe Louise, did you want to talk to that one?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I think we're probably one of the few regions that employs our coordinators full-time. Obviously, geographically, it's really important to have full-time coordinators in our region because of the distances that they have to travel. But, you know, with everything that's going on in Landcare at the moment, with the partnerships being formed, with the, you know, MOUs being signed, and all of those sorts of things going on, it is really, really important. People need consistency. So members, Landcarers, landholders, they need consistency. They like to speak to one person. You know, they like to have one person follow through on a particular project or on a particular meeting or a forum. And I think that consistency is really, really important because it helps engage people and it helps build their capacity. If they're dealing with, you know, they know that one person is there just for them. They don't have to, you know, rock between 2 or 3 different people for different things that they're actually needing.
Thanks, Louise. Anyone else like to talk to that?
Yeah, I can. So currently, coordinators are, some of my coordinators are 1 day a week, some are 2, some are 3. So if that's a really short amount of time, and I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I could spend 1 day a week catching up on my emails. But it also, by having that opportunity to grow, they're currently at capacity. So if we are successful in increasing volunteer recruitment and all of those things, that's more people they need to serve. So as Landcare grows, we really have this need that we need more coordinator hours to serve more people. And as Louise touched on before, once people know that you're there, they very quickly fill up your plate. So if we want to be able to increase their capacity to serve the community, we need to really make that time allowable for them. And unfortunately, we work in an industry where we all love what we do. So pay for the time that they're probably already giving us anyway. I don't know one coordinator that clocks off when their contract finishes for the week.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jess. And I think that a lot of coordinators are actually still doing that a considerable amount of extra time, just purely because things have to be delivered. Look, I can see Kate. Yes. So we'd love to hear from you, Kate. Thanks. I know you've been around the Parliamentary Friends of Landcare member for quite a few years. So thank you for joining us again today.
Yeah, so Kate Washington, Port Stephens, and we love Landcare up here. I spent half a day with everyone on Sunday planting trees, and it was just brilliant. But just wondering, for those of us, not in government, without our hands on the purse strings, what can we do to help support Landcare in terms of encouraging volunteers and promoting what you do, for us to have better some information that we can push out in different areas, whether that's through the local area coordinators contacting us or anything like that. I think that we could play a greater role in that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, and certainly coordinators are encouraged to develop a relationship with their local member, but that's certainly something that we could follow up again as well. And as you would know, it makes such a difference knowing that person rather than that position. That makes a big difference once you've actually met that person.
And I suppose, and I guess I do have those relationships, but it's just, for their sake, it's all these volunteers that are doing a lot, and they're the same people every time, and you just want to try and see new faces, and I guess that's the challenge.
Yeah, sure. And as you would know, it's a challenge for so many organisations, not just Landcare. Yeah. Would anyone else like to contribute to that?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your support. And while finances could solve a lot of problems, a huge problem that many of the panellists we've all recognised is volunteer recruitment. So MPs and government members, you have this following from the community, you have respect from the community. So any opportunity that you have to shine a light on the work that your groups are doing would never not be appreciated, whether it's sharing following along on Facebook and sharing posts as they come up, or including our events in your local bulletins. Any opportunity you have to share and shine a light on the work we're doing, but also recruitment opportunities would be so appreciated.
Yeah, thanks. Jim, did you have a brief comment there?
Oh, look, I just wanted to support what Jess has sort of pretty much covered it. But again, look, I know are conscious of the time and commitment that members of Parliament and our political representatives do. And while we want to build really great relationships with them, we want to have a positive influence on their time rather than just go to them for the sake of saying good day.
And so thanks everyone. Now, I did just have a question in the chat box from Penny Sharp. There are many Landcare opportunities in Sydney. How can people find out about this? Too many think it is just for the regions. And look, that's a really good point to flag, actually. And certainly our Sydney council representative, Bev de Brinket, is always on to us about that. That it's not just about the country, and they work very, very hard within their different city precincts as well. So I think that it's, making that connection with your Sydney groups. There are quite a substantial number of Sydney groups, and that's probably something else, Jodie and Rachel, that we could send out to our attendees afterwards as well. It's just maybe a list of our actual contacts. We might just have time for one more question. We can maybe sneak another one in if someone has another burning question. Kate's still got her hand up, but I don't think that the hand up is for a question. Another question?
I think it's all quiet on the Western Front, but I think
all right. We might round it up then. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And look, I'd just like, in closing, I'd just like to again reiterate the importance of that New South Wales Landcare program that will run until 2023. And we're very aware, or certainly I am on the ground and at the Landcare New South Wales level, very aware of the time frame that we have to work within to deliver on that program, and certainly very passionate about about what we do on the ground. And that program is currently employing 12 regional Landcare coordinators and 72 local Landcare coordinators across the state. And they are working directly with people on the ground. So a key contact, I suppose, within your local areas as well. And just once again, we'll be following up with further information regarding the Parliamentary Friends of Landcare. And for those of you who haven't already joined, there's an opportunity to follow up and join the Parliamentary Friends of Landcare. We do have our next Parliamentary Friends of Landcare Trees in the House event. Many of you I have seen at those events before, so it'll be great to see you there again at Parliament House on the 9th of November between 6 and 8 p.m. So we'll certainly wait and see what happens with COVID between now and then, but it's good to have that one in the background there to look forward to. A big thank you to everyone, to our MPs and staffers, to our panel, and our support staff at Landcare New South Wales, and particularly for our Parliamentary Friends of Landcare Chairperson Dougal Saunders for your support. We've done exceptionally well for time, and gotta love that. Thank you so much for joining us, and hoping that you have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Marg. Just from all of us as MPs, thank you so much to you, Marg, for stepping up today. You've done an amazing job. Jess and Louise and Jim and Richie, we've all really appreciated hearing your stories. It certainly helps us appreciate more the sort of work you do right across the board. So thank you so much to you. Thanks, guys, all of you MPs there and staffers who have joined today. Really important to be able to do this, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Thanks, everyone.